Welcome back again on Let's Share. I'm Molly Malinodasobri, your host once more. Today we'll be discussing another critical issue, which is on sexual and gender-based violence. Joining us is Madam Dora, a public health nurse and the regional adolescent health focal person for the Upper East region. She would be giving us the available support services and how we can all come together to combat the issues surrounding sexual and gender-based violence. Welcome, Madam Dora.
Thank you, Molly.
And I can't wait to dive into this conversation. To a layman, what is gender-based violence?
Okay, to simply explain sexual and gender-based violence, it's any act that is taken against a person just because of the fellow's gender, or the fact that the fellow is a male or a female, or one is younger and the other is older. That is what we call sexual and gender-based violence. And this comes in various forms. We have the physical one, emotional one, and the psychological one. Most commonly, we know is the physical one, but the emotional and psychological one, people do it without knowing that they are doing sexual and gender-based violence.
Okay, and let's come back to the adolescents and the young people. What are these sexual and gender-based violence that they are facing? What are the most common ones you hear about?
There is a lot, but I would just like to mention four. One has to do with domestic violence. And then we have sexual violence against these adolescents. Then the interesting one that is somehow seen as fading is one of the cultural practices known as FGM, which is still practiced in some parts of the Upper East region, in some border communities.
Okay, to someone watching, what is FGM?
Female genital mutilation.
Oh, wow. And these are some of the common gender-based violence that are still, or that adolescents are facing.
Yes, including early marriage.
Okay. So how does the SHARE project address these gender-based violence in adolescents?
Okay, so to be able to tell what SHARE is doing for us to appreciate, I just want to say that initially, what we do there under health services is to advocate for people to know what sexual and gender-based violence are, especially with regards to adolescents. We have a subset of adolescent health which we call the safety net that takes care of pregnant girls when they get pregnant. Ideally, we don't want them to get pregnant, but when they get pregnant, they being already vulnerable, we have a system to be able to care for them. So with health, we do visitations to them, support them during pregnancy. So the aim for the safety net is three. First, to see her through pregnancy and childbirth safely. Secondly, to put in place an agreed mechanism to prevent the occurrence of another planned pregnancy. Then thirdly, for her to plan what to do after delivery.
Wow.
So what we do is we visit them and we link them to support services individually. So let's say a girl is pregnant and she wants to go back to school. After you do the visitation, you link them to Ghana Education Service. And once a while, we meet as a group and then discuss some of the challenges of the pregnant girls and the various support services they can get. But we realize that there's a missing link in that place. So if Ghana Health Service is following now to link them to these support services, we do not get feedback as to whether, as they went for the services, they were able to get them or not. And we don't get feedback from the support services such as DOVSU, GES, and then social welfare. So with SHARE coming into the picture, they are giving support to each of these departments to be able to put up their mandate in supporting. So for instance, they engage GES directly, support them with resources to see how they are able to give this support to adolescents. Then they also give support to social welfare departments to see how they are able to work in collaboration with other departments. So at the end of the day, they call us for a review meeting quarterly, where we come to look at what has been done before, what can we do, at least to be able to strengthen the collaboration between these departments that are of importance when it comes to sexual and gender-based violence.
So with everything you have mentioned, how would young people seek advice or support when they witness or see any sexual and gender-based violence?
All right, first and foremost, I think life is very important. So I would advise any young person going through sexual and gender-based violence or has seen to encourage the one who is affected or the victim to report to the nearest health facility for medical care and assessment to ensure that the fellow's life is stable. The next thing is to give the psychological support whilst we give these services. We try our best to let the victim feel comfortable and feel safe whilst we give these services. Then we try to inquire as to if such act has been reported to the appropriate courtesies. So for example, if it is an issue of neglect or lack of maintenance, where a parent is not caring for their child or vice versa, then we would involve the Department of Social Welfare. Our duty is to give the information and encourage you to see them for the support. If it is an issue of assault or physical abuse, then we will involve the Department of Victims, Domestic Violence Victims. That is the DOVSU department, where they will handle it. And if it is something that we can do instantly to give you the support, then we will do to give you the support. The next thing too is that if the fellow is uncomfortable going there to report, sometimes maybe because of fear of victimization or what will be said about him or her, then you can call the hotlines. Like I mentioned in earlier episodes, like the Yankasa, the Orange Support Center. We have people there who you will call and then they'll be able to give you the counseling that you needed. And also, not to hide such things. Call out. There's a saying that see something, say something. For those who witness it, to be able to, blow the whistle for support to get to the person. And if you are a victim too, don't be quiet about it. Come out and seek for help. The Orange Support Line numbers will be shared at the end of the program for whoever wants to consult them so that they can call in. It's toll free.
Okay, so clearly you have a lot of experience in this. Can you give us a brief scenario or a success story surrounding sexual and gender-based violence that you have witnessed?
Oh, there are a lot of them. I would want to go through the adolescent way. One of the common ones that is done and people don't see it or they don't see it as a problem is that we had an engagement somewhere and a mother, we're talking about physically beating your child as a correctional measure. And a mother is like, I didn't know that I have given birth to a child. I cannot beat the child. So we made her to understand that, yes, you've given birth to the child, but it's the whole community's child. It's also that of the country. So the law can take you on. And that of the pregnant adolescents, most of the times they are pushed to marry. They don't want to marry. But because of the pregnancy, they will move you to the man's house to marry. That is also another form of abuse. Inside that marriage you've gone to marry to stay, sometimes they do not have money or the resources to feed an extra mouth, and you've come in. Most of the parents of the male or the boy is like, you have disappointed their son. And so you find this girl being the first to wake up and the last to go to bed. Sometimes nobody is even checking on them to see whether they've eaten or not.
That is quite very, very disturbing. And you mentioned the community. Let's go back to the community. What role can the community play in preventing and responding to sexual and gender-based violence issues?
I think it all starts with education and sensitization. Like I mentioned in that example, some are ignorant and they say ignorance is not what? Above the law. So we need to empower them, sensitize them and let them know that these acts are forms of sexual and gender-based violence. Then tell them what a person who is caught goes through, and tell them the other side of it from the perspective of the one suffering it, the victim. And that way, you would open the eyes of community members to know that if I am taken through this, I would not be happy. So after that, then we'll have a traditionally led advocacy where the traditional leaders, who sometimes some of these cases go to and they say, oh, let's do it a family matter. Oh, a man has beaten the wife. It happens. It was a mistake. If the traditional leaders come out and bring out bylaws, discuss what gender and sexual-based violence is, then people know that the gatekeepers in our community are wide open. They have seen and they know what is happening. And at the end of the day, I could be taken on. The next thing is to try and name and shame some people. Empower the community to be able to do something like that. Where if they identify where a family or a man beats the wife all the time, or there's issue of neglect, then the community takes it up and then they talk about it. Some of our success stories on some positive health behaviors like breastfeeding and the rest came about when mothers were composing songs, singing and making noise about it. So we could use some of these things and empower the women to sing and name. Definitely nobody wants the name to be a song in their community. And this is going to help us. Okay. Then to also share with them some of these support lines so that they know where to go to when something like this happens.
Okay, so before we wrap up today's episode, I will just entreat Madora to give us the available support lines, just highlight them real quick, and then we'll wrap up the episode.
Okay, what I have offhand in my head is that of the Orange Support Center, which is 0800 111 222. And then that of the Yankasa too is 0800 999 000. So at the end of the day, we will still display them under. There are a lot of them, as I mentioned, but these are the few I can talk about.
If you're an adolescent out there and you need any information on your sexual reproductive health, do not hesitate to contact She Plus hotline on 0800 001 122 or any of the numbers on your screen. Thank you. How do you think we can support victims of sexual and gender-based violence? Leave your answers in the comment section. Thank you very much, Madam Dora. It has been a pleasure having you. And that's all for today's episode. Don't forget to join us in the next one, where we'll be discussing more interesting issues surrounding sexual reproductive health and rights. And this has been Let's Share. As usual, I'm Molly Dasobri. Bye.